Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for checking the video out. Today we have more PlayStation news, rumors, and leaks to go over and cover today. Before we dive into these topics, do me a favor, if you end up enjoying the video or finding it informative, be sure to leave it a like. And if you are new here to the channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button as well. We're starting here with just a quick update regarding a new app that's available on the PlayStation 5, that being the Paramount Plus app. So if this is a service that you're subscribed to, it's now officially available on the PS5. There's really not much else to say about it. I figured I would just let you guys know. So there you go. Moving on to the next topic, apparently harassment in online games has prompted lawmakers to quiz Sony, Microsoft, and others. This is being reported on by PlayStation Lifestyle. US politicians have penned a letter to a number of gaming companies, including Sony and Microsoft, to quiz them about combating extremism and harassment in online games following a report by the Anti-Defamation League. According to Axios, the letter was written by 7 lawmakers after ADL found that in 2022, up to 77% of adults and 66% of teenage gamers reported being harassed while playing online. The aforementioned figures represent a 6% rise in harassment reports this year among teenagers and adults, both. We are writing to better understand the processes you have in place to handle player reports of harassment and extremism encounters in your online games, and ask for consideration of safety measures pertaining to anti-harassment and anti-extremism, reads the letter. So pretty much the takeaway from this is that the harassment, I guess, as they're putting it here, that is experienced in online games and kind of has been for many years, is seemingly increasing to the point where now, you know, it's prompting lawmakers to start questioning not just Sony, but many other companies, pretty much any company that has like a, relatively popular multiplayer game. So I don't know what's going to come of this, if anything, but, I figured I would just let you guys know that this is something that recently happened. Let me know your thoughts on it. Moving on, though, we are talking about Final Fantasy 16 and how it has been rated M17+ by the ESRB. Reading from PlayStation Universe, it says the ESRB has slapped an M17+ rating on Final Fantasy 16, revealing the upcoming Square Enix JRPG will include blood and gore, partial nudity, and strong language, among other adult themes. This sounds by far like the most violent Final Fantasy game to date, and the various adult themes featured mean it's certainly a far cry from the usual teen-rated antics of past installments. So that's what I find pretty interesting with this is, when I think of Final Fantasy, I'm not necessarily thinking of the most mature themed game, or I'm not really thinking that I'm going to be encountering the same type of blood and gore or something like that I would in, say a game like The Last of Us, for example. But, hearing this, I gotta say it does kind of pique my interest. I'm assuming that they're not just making this game more mature for the sake of doing so. I think it's obvious that a lot of thought and effort has went into the construction of this story, the characters, and obviously the themes, and there is a reason for it, and it's going to be interesting. I gotta say that to me this is going to make the game a little bit more interesting than maybe previous entries. So yeah, I think that Final Fantasy 16 has a lot going for it, and I'm really curious, for those of you who are longtime Final Fantasy fans, what do you think about this? What do you think about Final Fantasy 16 being rated M and, having like all these different mature themes? Let me know your thoughts on it. Next up, continuing to talk about Final Fantasy. Apparently, Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion on PS5 took 70% of the game's physical sales in the UK at launch. Games Industry's Christopher Dring has revealed on Twitter that Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion sold 70% of the physical copies in the UK on PS5. Square Enix's latest entry in the compilation of Final Fantasy VII, which is a remaster of the original 2008 PSP version of the game, debuted at number 8 on the charts. Not too bad for a remaster in this day and age. In terms of other consoles, the PS4 and Nintendo Switch versions of the game took 12% of sales, leaving Xbox with just 6% of overall physical sales. However, it should be noted that Xbox is more digital-based in terms of sales compared to other formats. And, that's the problem with getting data like this, is it's a small slice of the bigger pie, I guess you could say, that is overall sales data. However, I don't think it's too far-fetched to assume that maybe what we're seeing here in the UK, it would be very similar in other regions as well. And, you know, something that's brought up pretty frequently is how Square Enix seems to kind of neglect the Xbox platform with a lot of their JRPGs, and specifically with Final Fantasy. And, you know, look, I know that we can sit here and say, oh yeah, you know, we're not seeing digital sales, but still 6% of overall sales, that's not good. You know, just flat out, that's not good. I feel like it's really difficult to kind of fault Square Enix for maybe just deciding that the Xbox platform for some of their games, or maybe most of their games, just isn't really worth their time. Just being brutally honest here, but yeah, it'll be interesting if we get more sales data on this to see if, you know, if it's similar or not. So let me know your thoughts on that. Next up, we have some, in my opinion, very, very good and I think even reassuring news for PlayStation VR2. A big question that a lot of fans had, including myself, were, you know, what's going on with physical PSVR2 games? And I actually just assumed at some point that, well, there aren't going to be any. All PSVR2 games are going to be digital. Turns out that's not the case. These games will be getting physical versions. And so the thing we want to pay attention to with this, well, there's a couple things. Number one, not all PSVR2 games are going to get physical releases. It seems like maybe only the bigger, more, I guess you could say AAA type VR games are going to get physical releases. And on top of that, a lot of these physical releases might come later after the game is already released. When I'm looking at The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners Chapter 2, this game is set to come out in March for PSVR 2. But if you look over on Amazon, which is, you know, where we're starting to see some of these games pop up, it says the item is going to be released on April 25th. So, yeah, I mean, that date could change. Obviously, we have some time, but it wouldn't surprise me if that's what we can expect with most physical releases. I think that a lot of people probably are going to be buying their VR games digitally, but there's no doubt that, you know, there is going to be a small community of players who want to have, you know, the physical discs and physical games. So if you are somebody who's planning to pick up PSVR 2, let me know. Are you planning to buy your games digitally, or are you going to try to pick up physical copies if they're offered, even if that means you have to wait a little bit? Let me know. Moving on to the next topic, though, we have an interesting one regarding a first-party PlayStation studio. Apparently, Team Asobi is looking to work on a mobile game with an external partner. Reading from Gaming Bolt, it says Sony has made it abundantly clear on multiple occasions that it intends to greatly expand its presence in the mobile gaming space by bringing popular PlayStation properties over to the platform in a bid to expand their audience, and it seems more steps are being taken behind the scenes to that end. Team Asobi, developer of Astro Bot Rescue Mission and Astro's Playroom, seems to be on the lookout for an external partner to work with on a mobile title. A job listing for the position of mobile game producer suggests the same. Quote, Team Asobi is looking for an experienced producer capable of managing the production of a new mobile title in partnership with an external developer from start to finish, end quote. Listed among the responsibilities for applicants is searching and identifying the right developers for the title, suggesting that the studio hasn't yet struck a partnership with an external studio for the title in question just yet, with multiple mentions of taking charge of development from start to finish, would suggest that work on the project hasn't begun yet in earnest. So yeah, this is something I figured I would let you guys know about because yeah, we are seeing Sony continue to push into the mobile market, but in this case, I think it's worth pointing out, and I think important to point out, that this is not going to be something Team Asobi themselves is working on. They're, as it says here very clearly, looking for an external partner. So this is essentially them saying, look, we would like to hand the Astro IP to a mobile game studio to do something with it for, you know, the mobile platform. And I gotta say, out of all the IPs that Sony owns and the ones that are really kind of being leveraged right now by PlayStation, you know, Astrobot, I think, makes the most sense to eventually at some point make its way over to mobile. So, you know, there we go. Let me know what you guys think of that. Next up, we have some news on the Dualsense Edge, and it's maybe not so good news for anybody who is looking forward to this controller. Apparently, it was revealed by Sony that the battery life is actually moderately shorter than the original PS5 DualSense. Reading from PlayStation Lifestyle, they say Sony has just provided a deeper look at the Dualsense Edge Pro controller that will be coming to PS5 fairly soon, but the one thing that they neglected to mention was that the controller will have a, quote, moderately shorter, end quote, battery life compared to the original DualSense controller. For those already complaining about the length of battery on the DualSense, this is not encouraging news. Sony hasn't given a figure for how long the battery life will be for the Dualsense Edge, but did tell The Verge that it's going to be moderately shorter than the DualSense. The battery life for the original DualSense controller is around 12 to 15 hours, depending on whether features like haptic feedback and speakers are being used. Sony's full statement explained the reason for the shorter battery life is that the Edge has many more features within that will help to drain the battery life. The company has tried to strike a good balance between wireless operating time and delivering robust high-performance features, but will be providing a longer USB braided cable for a wired connection to the PS5 console if players need to preserve battery life. So here's my thoughts on this. I feel like anybody who was thinking about buying this controller, this is not going to make a difference to them. I think we can all universally agree that this is not ideal. I feel like at the very least, what we would have liked to see for a $200 controller, it's very expensive for a controller, is to hear that it has the same battery life as the regular DualSense. But at the same time, it all depends on, kind of how much you play and what your setup is like. So for me, for example, I use the PlayStation Charge Station. I have 2 DualSenses on it at all time. I rarely ever play to the point where my controller's dead and I now have to swap it out to another one. But something else that I feel like is worth mentioning, and I do see some people overreacting a little bit to this, just a little bit. Again, I'm not saying it's good news. It's not. It's bad news. But people really are out here making it seem like if you buy this $200 controller and you play it for like a game for like 8 to 10 hours straight, and it starts to let you know it needs to be charged, it's going to die, they make it seem like you got to put the controller down and you can't use it. But you can just plug it in and charge it that way. I mean, it's understandable that for anybody who's paying $200 for a controller, you don't want to hear that the battery life's going to be worse. That's kind of the last thing you want to hear. But at the same time, as I said, I feel like there are a lot of people who are looking forward to this controller, and they just kind of really don't care. Like, they're going to buy it, they're going to enjoy it, and these are likely enthusiasts as well that already have like a setup of some kind when it comes to the charging station, which this controller is compatible with. So yeah, I guess at this point, I'm going to be interested to hear from anybody who is planning on picking up this controller. How do you feel about this? Moving on to the final topic, though, we are talking a little bit about God of War Ragnarok. I'm going to give you forewarning. There will be spoilers in what we discuss in this topic, so if you have not completed God of War Ragnarok, you're going to want to click off this video. But pretty much what we have is Santa Monica Studio explaining why they didn't actually consider killing Kratos off. Reading from PlayStation Lifestyle, it says Santa Monica Studio has explained why Kratos was kept alive in God of War Ragnarok. In fact, the team never considered killing him, according to director Eric Williams, who told the Washington Post that Kratos staying alive was an integral part of the story that the studio wanted to tell. When Atreus, aka Loki, meets Angrboda in God of War Ragnarok, the duo discuss a prophecy that suggests Kratos will die and Atreus will serve the villain Odin. It's an important part of the story that directly influences the events thereafter and has some fans wondering if Santa Monica Studio did consider going in that direction. However, that's not the case. Quote, "Oh no, we did not consider killing Kratos for many reasons. The story that we wanted to tell was this idea of this parent-child unit coming together and then becoming strong enough that they know each other and that they know that they made each other better, and that if you were to break them apart, you'd still feel like they'd be okay." So that's exactly what Eric Williams had to say, and I just kind of wanted to share this with you because, it is interesting. You do wonder, right? You can't help but wonder, especially after beating Ragnarok, were they ever actually considering just straight up killing Kratos off? Apparently that was never in consideration, so there you go. A lot of people building up to Ragnarok thought that's exactly what was going to happen. So let me know your thoughts on that. But that's going to do it for the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it informative. Leave it a like if you did. Subscribe if you're new. Hit the bell notification icon and feel free to share the video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.